The warships of the Varkathi Dominion hung in orbit above the small human colony world of Miravel, a glittering crescent of steel and plasma. Admiral Zorth stood at the forward viewing deck, claws folded neatly behind his back, eyes half-lidded in disdain. Below, the planet's defenses flickered sporadically. Missile silos that barely fired, orbital cannons that spat once or twice before being snuffed out. He exhaled in boredom. "Pathetic," he muttered, voice carrying across the bridge. His officers straightened nervously at the sound, though not because they disagreed. They had seen 100 such campaigns, each ending the same way. A junior tactician chirped from his console. "Admiral, human transmissions request terms of negotiation." Zorth allowed himself a small laugh, deep and humorless. "They negotiate with stones while we wield suns. Obliterate their defenses. Do it slowly, I want them to feel it." On the planet below, Miravel's cities burned one after another. The humans fought, but not with coordination, at least not that the Dominion could see. Their ships darted in brief sorties, their militia formations broke under fire. Zorth leaned on the railing, expression sour. "We conquer vermin, not soldiers. Why does the galaxy waste time fearing these creatures?" The bridge filled with dry chuckles, yet none lasted long. Even among the Varkathi, there was unease when the subject of Earth arose. Tales whispered through mercenary taverns and rival courts of human resilience, of wars so bloody they reshaped continents. Zorth dismissed them as myth. He believed what he saw, and what he saw was weakness. Hours later, Miravel's final resistance collapsed. Dominion forces descended, installing governors and banners, recording the victory with sterile precision. Another world claimed. At the victory debrief, Zorth addressed the council through HoloLink. The great chamber of the Dominion Council flickered to life around him, filled with scaled dignitaries in jeweled armor. The humans break like glass. Their colonies crumble in days. I propose we bypass these border pebbles and strike their core. Strike Earth itself. Murmurs rippled through the council. One elder narrowed his golden eyes. "Earth is said to be guarded, Admiral. Their fleets are scattered," Zorth interrupted sharp. "We've seen no unity, no central command. Their colonies beg for mercy before the first salvo lands. Their homeworld will do the same. We must take it before others think the humans more trouble than they're worth." The council deliberated, but arrogance weighed heavier than caution. After little debate, the decree was given. The Dominion would mount an expeditionary strike against Earth. Zorth bowed with calculated grace. "History will remember this day," he said. While preparations began on Earth itself, the atmosphere was calm, eerily so. Evacuation shuttles lifted from minor outposts, but there was no chaos, no frantic scramble. Families departed with measured silence. Soldiers saluted quietly. Convoys moved as if on rehearsed schedule. If one looked closer, there was something deliberate in their motions, like chess pieces sliding into place. The Dominion scouts, watching from deep space, misread the scene entirely. "They retreat," one reported smugly. "They abandon their worlds rather than fight." Zorth allowed the report to stand. It confirmed everything he wanted to believe. Yet the first wave into the Sol system returned confused, broken reports. Ships, whole squadrons, simply stopped transmitting. They had not been destroyed, they had been lost. Navigation records showed nothing. Black boxes screamed silence. "Explain," Zorth demanded, claws wrapping the console. The surviving captain of one frigate appeared via holo, visibly shaken. "We tracked their signal, Admiral. A small group of human vessels ahead. We pursued. Then nothing. Our escorts blinked off scanners. No wreckage. No radiation trails. They were gone." "Cloaking fields," another officer suggested. "No," the captain whispered. "Not cloaking. Vanishing. The humans, they vanish." The bridge went still. Zorth's jaw flexed. He despised fear in his officers, but the word clung to the air. Vanish. It suggested forces unseen, weapons unimagined. He forced a scoff. "Malfunction. Panic. Humans are not capable of such sorcery. We will confirm with the next fleet." The next fleet vanished too. This time, a Dominion destroyer captured partial visuals before its systems failed, grainy, chaotic footage of human warships breaking apart and then reforming elsewhere, as if slipping through folds of reality. They appeared at impossible angles, struck without warning, then disappeared again. The images were played on Zorth's command deck, viewed in silence by officers who had never known silence before. These were not lumbering militias. These were predators in shadows. Still, Zorith steeled himself. He would not permit fear to infect his command. Tricks. Smoke and mirrors. They cannot fight directly, so they hide. We will drag them into the open, and when they stand, they will fall. But as he dismissed the footage, his eyes lingered longer than he meant them to. He could not shake the sight of those ships vanishing like wraiths into the dark. That night, while the Dominion celebrated another victory over Miravel, Zorith sat alone in his private quarters. He replayed the human footage over and over, each time searching for the weakness, the misstep. Yet each time, his unease deepened. He thought of the whispers in the council chamber, the legends spoken even among enemies, legends he had mocked. Perhaps there was truth in them, after all. Still, the order stood. Earth was their next target. The Dominion armada gathered at the edge of Sol, banners unfurled, weapons primed. Zorith gave the final command to advance, but the moment tasted bitter in his mouth. Victory was supposed to feel sweet. Instead, as the fleet pushed forward into human space, he could not escape the chill gnawing at the back of his mind. For the first time in his career, Admiral Zorith wondered if he had underestimated his prey. And somewhere, hidden behind layers of silence and shadow, the humans were waiting. The first time Admiral Kane addressed the War Council, his voice carried the weight of years spent preparing for the inevitable. He was not tall, nor especially commanding in appearance, but his calmness filled the chamber more completely than any raised tone. Around him, officers from every branch of Earth Command waited for instruction. They had been drilled for this moment, trained not to flinch, though beneath the uniforms lay the collective tension of a species that had lived under the shadow of extinction for generations. "They've made their move," Kane said, eyes sweeping across the table's holographic map. Red markers blinked where Dominion fleets had entered human space, each flare a reminder of lives lost. Yet his hand, steady and unhurried, dragged new markers into position. Blue arcs stretched outward from Earth, hidden paths, concealed deployments. "And we are ready." Across from him, Commander Lena Vey leaned forward, her sharp features illuminated by the flickering display. "The vanishing units have held formation. The Dominion suspects cloaking, but they have no idea what they're seeing. They think we're hiding." "They always think that," Kane replied with a faint, humorless smile. "They believe deception is cowardice. They never learn that sometimes it is a blade." The officers exchanged glances. Their project, decades of secrecy, was no longer theory. The Wormhole Corridor Initiative, whispered among soldiers as the Ghost Fleet, had become reality. Squadrons slipping through hidden folds of space, bypassing scanners, emerging at impossible vectors. It had been humanity's most closely guarded weapon, one the Dominion was now learning to fear. Lena lowered her voice. "Admiral, there's talk among the younger crews. They've seen ships vanish beside them, reappear light years away. Some say we're playing with forces we don't understand." Kane regarded her for a long moment. His eyes betrayed no anger, only a quiet gravity. They're right to be unsettled. War should unsettle. But they'll keep their focus. Because if they don't, there will be nothing left to focus on. Silence lingered, heavy as stone. Each officer in that room carried scars, some visible, some buried deep. Kane knew them all. He had recruited them not for strength alone, but for the way they bent and refused to break. Humanity's strength had never been its technology, though now they wielded power enough to terrify empires. Its strength had always been endurance. Hours later, as fleets repositioned across the darkness, Kane stood at the forward viewport of the flagship Resolute. Beyond the glass stretched a sea of stars, indifferent, eternal. Lena approached quietly at his side. "You don't speak of victory," she said softly. He did not look away from the stars. "Because this isn't victory. Not yet. Victory is clean. This will be anything but." Far from the human lines, Admiral Zorith watched as reports piled on his console, each more frustrating than the last. The vanishing units struck again, squadrons lost without a trace. Ships disabled in silence, their cores gutted, crews vanished or found drifting with no memory of how they were beaten. Zorith crushed the data slate in his claws and let it shatter on the deck. "They mock us," he hissed to his officers. "These humans play shadows instead of battle." His second-in-command, younger and still carrying the arrogance of untested blood, ventured, "If they will not face us directly, perhaps they lack the strength to. Perhaps these tricks are all they have." Zoratha's gaze snapped to him, searing. Do not mistake strategy for weakness. A predator that waits in silence is not afraid, it is hungry. The words unsettled even Zorath himself. He remembered the footage he could not erase, human ships twisting through void like wraiths, striking with precision that no Dominion algorithm could predict. He had seen fear in the eyes of his crews, an emotion he had thought burned out of their species long ago. Worse, he had felt a flicker of it himself. In the Sol system, the trap tightened. Human fleets vanished from sensors, then reappeared in coordinated arcs, encircling Dominion ships before a shot could be fired. Engines shut down under precision strikes. Communications dissolved into static. Some Dominion vessels found themselves alone, their escorts gone as if swallowed whole. On the Resolute's bridge, Kane received the first reports with no outward reaction. Lena, however, could not hide her flicker of satisfaction. We've forced their vanguard to retreat. Zorath will be furious. He should be, Kane said, but he won't admit it. Not yet. She tilted her head, studying him. And when he does... Kane finally turned, his gaze sharp, cold. Then the war begins in earnest. Until then, we let him think he's still in control. Across the void, Zorath attempted to maintain the illusion of dominance, but the weight pressed heavier each day. Each engagement bled ship's morale certainty. His captains whispered that Earth was no mere world, but a fortress that consumed fleets whole. Zorath silenced such talk with threats, yet he knew whispers traveled faster than orders. His officers avoided his gaze, eyes haunted by what they had seen. The Dominion had conquered dozens of civilizations, but none had ever fought like this. None had ever used absence itself as a weapon. For Kane, each victory was tempered by the cost. Reports of casualties arrived quietly, names etched into the data feed. He read every one. He remembered every one. To his officers, he spoke with steel. Alone, the names burned behind his eyes. Humanity had learned to wear masks long before the Dominion arrived, masks of calm, masks of certainty. Beneath them was fear, grief, and the relentless drive to survive. One evening, with Earth a pale jewel behind him, Kane addressed the crews across the fleet. His words carried on every frequency, into every cabin, every cockpit. We are not ghosts, he said. We are not vanishing. We are here. We have always been here. And we will remain here, long after the Dominion is gone. They think us prey. They think us shadows. Let them. Tomorrow, when they look into the dark, they will find us waiting. Applause never came. No cheers, no shouting. Only silence. A silence heavy with resolve, a silence more terrifying to the Dominion than any roar of triumph could have been. On his flagship, Zorath watched the intercepted broadcast in private. The human admiral's calmness gnawed at him, more dangerous than arrogance, more unsettling than threat. This was not the voice of prey. This was the voice of something patient, deliberate, inevitable. He closed the feed, claws tightening until the console groaned. For the first time in his long career, Zorath wondered whether he was fighting to win, or simply struggling not to lose. The next wave gathered at the edge of human space. The Dominion still believed they were hunters. But deep in the silence, humanity had already shifted the game. The prey had vanished, only to reappear with teeth bared. And the galaxy, though it did not yet know it, had already changed forever. Admiral Zorath had always taken pride in his composure, in his ability to appear unshaken before his crews, even when the tides of battle turned unexpectedly. Yet now, in the solitude of his chamber, he watched the same fragments of human war footage again and again, his jaw tight, his claws scraping across the arm of his chair. The archive was incomplete, scavenged from ancient broadcasts and intercepted data streams, but it told a story more unnerving than he had expected. Tanks grinding through ruined cities, skies thick with fire, soldiers locked in desperate hand-to-hand combat, fleets burning above oceans while civilians huddled in the ashes. Humanity's history was not of peace punctuated by war, but of war punctuated occasionally by peace. They fought each other with a savagery that made the Dominion's campaigns look sterile by comparison. He muted the sound, but the images were worse in silence. He could almost imagine the screams of countless voices layered across centuries, each generation learning from the last how to kill more efficiently. These creatures were not inventing cruelty to answer the Dominion. They had perfected it long before they left their cradle. A chime interrupted him. The council demanded his report. He straightened, suppressing the unease gnawing inside, and strode to the command chamber. The Dominion Council chamber flickered into being around him through holographic projection, a vast oval of ornate thrones, every elder cloaked in ceremonial armor, scales glinting under artificial light. Their eyes burned with the arrogance of centuries of conquest. Zorith bowed, forcing his voice to remain steady. "We have underestimated humanity," he began. His words caused a ripple, though not a fear, of irritation. "Their fleets do not retreat. They vanish and return where least expected. Their tactics exploit weaknesses we did not know we had. I advise caution before we commit more forces." A counselor waved a claw dismissively. "Caution? Against a species still tied to its home star? You speak as though they are predators when they are clearly prey." "They are not prey," Zorith said, louder than intended. His voice echoed through the chamber, startling even himself. He steadied, lowering his tone. "They are something else. We believe their scattered colonies proved disunity. In truth, they were lures. Their fleets were not absent, they were hidden. And when they strike with precision I have never witnessed." Another elder leaned forward. "You have always favored exaggeration, Admiral. Perhaps these humans have frightened you into mistaking tricks for strategy. If their history is as violent as the archives suggest, then they are fractured, undisciplined, divided. Such creatures cannot form a lasting defense." Zorith wanted to shout, but years of discipline held him in check. He inhaled slowly. "Fractured, yes. Divided often. But when threatened, they unite. The footage does not lie. Their wars end not in surrender, but in escalation. They fight until they have nothing left, and then they fight with that too." The chamber darkened as the council murmured among themselves. Finally, the Speaker of the Dominion, a figure draped in gold, raised his hand. "Enough. You will continue your campaign. The Dominion does not falter before primitives. We will commit the full armada. Earth will be brought to heel before the season ends." Zorith's claws curled inward until the skin beneath his scales throbbed. He bowed stiffly. "As you command." But as the transmission dissolved and the chamber vanished, the words tasted of ash. Later, aboard his flagship, he stood before the observation glass. Stars drifted in cold silence, but all he could see were the human eyes in the recordings, grim, weary, unyielding. He thought of Kane, the human admiral whose broadcast he had watched in secret. That voice haunted him, steady, unafraid, utterly certain of eventual triumph. Lena Vey had appeared beside Kane in that message, her expression unreadable, but Zorith remembered the faint gleam of pride in her eyes. They were not soldiers playing at war. They were soldiers born of it. His second-in-command entered, breaking his reverie. "Admiral, the Council has confirmed reinforcements. 3 fleets en route. With such numbers, even these tricks will collapse." Zorith turned slowly, measuring his officer's certainty. 3 fleets. Against a species that has already swallowed 2, without trace? Do you not see what is happening? The younger officer stiffened. "I see that your fear clouds judgment. Perhaps command should." Zorith moved before the sentence finished, claws closing around the officer's throat. Not tight enough to kill, but enough to silence. He leaned in close. "Fear does not cloud me. It sharpens me. And if you ignore it, it will sharpen you into a corpse." He released the officer, who stumbled back, shaken. Zorith stared at the deck. He had never spoken so openly, never let his doubts slip through the mask. Yet the mask was cracking, and he could not hold it forever. That night he dreamed, not of victories, but of silence. Endless silence where fleets once roared. He dreamed of vanishing ships, of human eyes in the dark. He woke with a start, heart hammering, and for a moment he did not know if he was still dreaming. Meanwhile, in the Sol system, Admiral Kane reviewed intelligence reports, each marked with the Dominion's mounting frustration. Lena stood beside him, her voice low. "They'll come with everything soon. Zorith will obey his counsel. He doesn't have a choice." Kane nodded. "And when he does, we'll show them what it means to provoke us." She hesitated, studying his face. "Do you ever wonder if we've become the monsters they fear?" He looked up at her, and for once his composure cracked, just slightly. "Every day. But better a monster awake than prey asleep." They held each other's gaze, the silence between them heavy with shared burden. Then the alarm signaled incoming Dominion reinforcements, larger than any wave yet recorded. Kane straightened, mask of command sliding back into place. "Prepare the corridors," he ordered. "Let them come. The longer they believe we're shadows, the harder the truth will hit." Across the void, Zorith stood among his restless crews, staring into the darkness. He had warned his council. They had not listened. Now the responsibility would fall to him alone to hold an empire together while his enemies struck from places unseen. He wondered if history would remember him as the fool who led them to ruin, or the only one who had understood too late what humanity truly was. The fleets converged, stars swallowed by engines, silence broken by the thunder of war approaching. Neither side celebrated. Both knew what was coming would decide more than a battle. It would decide which species would define the future of the galaxy. Zoratha's claws tightened on the command rail, and Kane's eyes fixed on the display of incoming hostiles. Neither spoke the word aloud, but both understood it, as though the same thought crossed light years to connect them. Inevitable. The Dominion Armada entered the Sol system like a tidal wave of steel, blotting out the starlight with a forest of engines and weapons arrays. To the officers aboard the flagship Resolute, it looked less like a fleet and more like a moving continent, vast enough to swallow Earth itself. Yet Admiral Kane stood motionless at the command dais, his hands clasped behind his back, his expression a mask of calm certainty. Around him, his officers waited, breaths held, every eye fixed on him. "They came as we expected," he said quietly, his voice carrying across the bridge. "Now we show them why they should have stayed away." Across the void, Admiral Zorath watched his own displays fill with enemy signatures. For a moment, he felt relief. Finally, the humans would be cornered, forced to fight in the open. But as the minutes passed, the relief soured. The human signatures shifted strangely, flickering in and out of sensor range, multiplying in places where none had been moments before. His second-in-command stammered, "Admiral, their numbers. Our readings can't stabilize. They appear everywhere." "Everywhere," Zorath repeated under his breath. He had warned the council. He had begged them to understand. Now their arrogance would devour them all. Without warning, wormholes bloomed across the Dominion formation like blossoms of light tearing open the fabric of space. Out of them poured human warships, squadrons of drones, autonomous carriers, entire fleets that had never been on any Dominion chart. They moved with terrifying coordination, striking engines, severing supply ships, dismantling escort craft with surgical efficiency. They were not fighting for glory, not even for vengeance. They were dismantling an empire piece by piece. On the Resolute, Kane issued orders with the calm precision of surgeon. Cut their supply arteries first. Leave their flagships isolated. No waste, no spectacle. Every shot must mean something. His voice never rose, never hardened. The silence of his delivery carried more weight than any roar could have. Lena Vey watched the tactics unfold with awe and dread. "They'll never recover from this," she murmured. "We're not fighting them, we're unmaking them." Kane did not answer. His eyes stayed on the shifting arcs of light that marked Dominion ships falling one by one. In his chest, the weight of every name lost pressed heavy, but he carried it as fuel, not burden. Zoratha's bridge shuddered under the impact of another human strike. Officers shouted in panic, consoles flaring red with warnings. "We are losing control of the flank," one cried. "They appear behind us faster than we can respond." Zorath bared his teeth. "Hold them. Regroup but his command died as a section of his display vanished, a full squadron of Dominion ships erased in silence. His claws dug into the railing. "They are not fighting a battle," he whispered. "They are delivering a lesson." The collapse began faster than any Dominion officer could comprehend. Human units struck and vanished, until panic spread through the alien ranks like fire through dry grass. Orders dissolved. Captains fled without command, and the once mighty formation unraveled into fragments. At last, Kane gave the order his officers had been waiting for. "Send the broadcast." Across every channel, into every Dominion ship, his voice carried. "This war is over. Lay down your arms and you will live. Resist and you will vanish, as your fleets have already vanished." There was no anger in his tone, no triumph. Only certainty. The Dominion heard it, and the words hollowed them out more completely than the weapon's fire. On the flagship, Zorath listened in silence. Around him, his crew broke, some lowering their heads in despair, others trembling with rage or grief. He closed his eyes. He could continue the slaughter, but it would not change the end. Humanity had already won. His duty now was to salvage what remained of his people. He ordered the retreat, though in his heart he knew retreat was a fiction. They were not withdrawing. They were fleeing into irrelevance. The days that followed echoed across the galaxy like thunder. Dominion fleets surrendered without being touched, colonies raised human flags before a single shot was fired. Panic consumed the Empire, not because they had been beaten in battle, but because they had been broken in spirit. An empire built on fear now trembled before something it could not understand. On Earth, Kane received the final reports without celebration. His officers expected some declaration, some release of triumph, but he offered none. He merely nodded, then dismissed them to rest. Only Lena remained behind. "You've done it," she said softly. "The Dominion is finished." Kane leaned on the console, his gaze distant. "No, we've only opened the door. The galaxy thought us fragile. Now they'll see us awake. And I wonder what kind of monsters they'll decide we are." Lena studied him, the weight in her chest mirroring his. "Then what do we become?" His answer came after a long silence. "Whatever the galaxy forces us to be." Far from Earth, Zorith stood before what remained of the Dominion Council. Their thrones were empty, their voices weak, their authority shattered. To his surprise, humanity did not demand his execution. Instead, Kane himself appeared via transmission. His calm voice delivered an unexpected decree. "You will govern under our watch. You will live, and your people will live, but the Dominion is no longer yours. It belongs to the future, and the future will not be shaped by conquest, but by survival." The council bowed their heads, broken. Zorith alone kept his eyes raised. His pride was ashes, but some small ember of defiance remained. He had not been destroyed, only humbled. Humanity had given him life, and with it, a role in the new order. He accepted with a solemn nod. When the transmission ended, Zorith whispered to himself, predators pretending to be prey. How long did we mistake them for anything else? Back aboard the Resolute, Kane finally stood alone at the viewport. Beyond the glass stretched the infinite night, stars scattered like embers waiting to be stoked. Humanity had not sought war, but war had come, and it had left them standing not as victims, but as arbiters of the galaxy's next chapter. He closed his eyes, letting the silence wash over him. In that silence, he could almost hear the voices of those who had fallen, urging him forward, reminding him that survival had never been the end. It was only the beginning. When he opened his eyes again, his reflection stared back at him, older, wearier, but unbroken. He whispered the words only to himself, but the stars bore witness. The galaxy hasn't met humanity yet. They've only met our patience.